basement of Madison Seminary isn't small. It's sprawling, divided into several rooms. But the one we're in is. It sits in the far corner of the building, where two outer walls meet. Each wall has a single window that lets in just a sliver of light from outside, barely enough to outline the stone. The ceiling is low, the air heavy and stale, the kind that makes you whisper without realizing it. It's cold down here, colder than it should be, the kind of cold that feels like it's paying attention. Near the middle of the floor, there's a rough patch where cement's been cut away, revealing dirt underneath. Years back, investigators brought in cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. The dogs hit on one spot. The radar showed something else, a shape a few feet away that looked like a human head, or maybe even a baby. They dug where the radar said to dig, and came up empty. That's where two investigators are standing tonight. One of them sitting in a chair on the opposite side of the room, holding a pair of dowsing rods. The other's near that hole in the floor, holding a K2 meter, basically a handheld EMF detector. If you've never seen one, it lights up when it detects a burst of electromagnetic energy. The idea is that if spirits really do exist, they might be able to manipulate that energy, maybe even use it to answer questions. "If you can hear me," he says, "reach out and touch this device. Light it up for yes." Nothing at first, just silence. Then, out of nowhere, every light on the K2 jumps straight to red. They look at each other, one of those quick, "Are you seeing this too?" moments. "Were you responsible for a woman's death here?" the investigator asks out loud. Silence again. You could count the heartbeats in it. And then, another full flash. The air gets heavier, still. The man in the chair watches as his rods slowly turn towards the same answer. "Was it an accident?" he asks. Nothing. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. "Did you mean her harm?" The K2 lights up again, bright and hard. Over the next 20 minutes, the pattern stays the same. Bursts of light, long gaps of silence. The answers come quick when they want to, and not at all when they don't. Whoever, or whatever, is down here says he killed someone. He says he's not sorry. He says he can leave, but never has. Then comes the question that hangs in the air longer than any other. Have you ever seen the light? Nothing. 10 seconds goes by. 15. The windows have gone dark, total black now. The K2's the only thing visible, a faint green glow waiting to respond. Does that mean you haven't seen the light? Instantly, it flares bright red. It's so fast, so specific, it feels like an answer. And then, nothing. No flicker, no sound, no more responses. Just the kind of silence that presses against your skin. They stand there waiting for one more sign that never comes. What you just heard wasn't a legend. It wasn't folklore or a story passed around online. That event really happened. To me. Myself and a colleague went to Madison Seminary to explore the location as part of research for this show. A building rich with history and said to have seen more than 200 deaths over its lifetime. Over the years, this old brick structure in Madison, Ohio has been many things. A school, a home for Civil War widows, a mental health facility, and even government offices. But today, it's known for something very different. The energy that builds after dark, the whispers that seem to answer back, and the feeling that some part of its past still hasn't moved on. I'm your host, Robert Barber. This is the story of Madison Seminary, its history, its hauntings, and the echoes that still linger inside its walls. For nearly 2 centuries, one building in Ohio has stood through war, reform, and rumor. And somewhere inside, the past still seems to breathe. This is State of the Unknown. Madison Seminary stands in the quiet town of Madison, Ohio, about 40 miles east of Cleveland. From a distance, the building looks almost too large for the town around it. A massive, weather-worn structure of red brick and pale stone, nearly 50,000 square feet spread across 5 levels. A stone basement buried beneath the foundation. 2 main floors that once served as classrooms and dormitories, and an upper level that later was used for institutional housing. Above it all is a central tower that rises above the roofline, its tall windows catching the light just enough to remind you how long it's been standing there. It was built in 1847, originally as an educational facility called the Madison Seminary. The name can be misleading. It wasn't a religious seminary, and there's no record of students leaving here to join the ministry. In the mid-1800s, seminary simply meant an academy for higher learning. And that's exactly what this was, a coeducational school that served the local community for several decades. Inside, the architecture still reflects that era. Long corridors, tall ceilings, sunlight slanting through high windows. Beneath it all lies a narrow basement of stone and cement. Above, an attic level that would later earn the name the Asylum. Every floor feels a little different. The kind of place where your footsteps echo back at you even when you're sure you're alone. After the Civil War, the property took on a very different purpose. In 1891, it was purchased by the Ohio Women's Relief Corps, the auxiliary of the Grand Army of the Republic, a national organization for Union veterans. The Corps used the building as a residence for widows, wives, and mothers of Union soldiers who no longer had families to care for them. For many of those women, Madison Seminary became their last home. Over the next several decades, ownership changed hands more than once. By the early 1900s, the state of Ohio assumed control and placed the property under the Department of Mental Hygiene and Corrections. It served a mix of functions: part residential facility, part custodial institution, housing patients with mental illness, people with developmental disabilities, and at times, those held under state custody. The building's later use as a correctional or treatment facility added another layer to its reputation. Records from that era are incomplete, but there are verified accounts of neglect, overcrowding, and difficult living conditions typical of state institutions of the time. Eventually, the state decommissioned the site, and for years the old structure sat abandoned. Windows broken, plaster falling, nature pushing its way back in. Local kids dared each other to sneak inside. Ghost stories started circulating, and the legend of Madison Seminary as one of Ohio's most haunted locations began to grow. As word spread, so did the curiosity. Madison Seminary was later featured on television investigations including Ghost Hunters, Destination Fear, and other national paranormal series, each adding to its reputation and mystique. Today, the property is privately owned and maintained as a historic landmark. restoration has stabilized the building without erasing its age. Walking through it, you can still see the original wood floors, worn stairs, and narrow halls that echo with a century and a half of footsteps. The exact number of deaths that occurred here isn't known. Some accounts put it at more than 200, a figure that likely includes residents from the Women's Relief Corps home and later institutional patients. A small cemetery behind the property holds several of those women, though how many others rest in unmarked ground is uncertain. What's left is a building that has served as a school, a refuge, a hospital, and a state institution. Nearly 2 centuries of Ohio history contained inside a single structure. And for a place with that kind of past, it's no surprise that people still feel something when they walk inside. Madison Seminary isn't one of those places where the stories center on a single room. Nearly every hallway and corner carried its own kind of energy, its own personality. Down in the basement, where we held our K2 sessions, the air feels heavy and cold, the kind of stillness that settles deep in your chest. That's the area where cadaver dogs once alerted and ground-penetrating radar picked up something shaped like a head or a small body. They dug and found nothing, but the stories only grew. Upstairs, the mood changes. The Civil War-era wing once housed the women of the Ohio Women's Relief Corps, widows and wives of Union soldiers who had nowhere else to go. The rooms here are smaller, quieter, and they feel different from the rest of the building. Softer, almost protective. Visitors describe faint humming, the scent of old perfume, and gentle touches on their arm. Many believe those experiences are connected to Elizabeth Stiles, a woman whose life reads like a novel. She served the Union during the Civil War, not only as a nurse, but as a spy, working behind Confederate lines and carrying coded messages for President Lincoln's administration. After the war, she joined the Women's Relief Corps and eventually spent her later years inside these same walls. People describe her presence as calm and maternal, a quiet guardian who still checks in on those who visit. If Madison Seminary has a protector, most agree it's her. A few rooms away, the tone shifts again. This is Sarah's room, the one investigators call the girl who wants to go home. Legend says that during an EVP session, someone once asked what she wanted, and a faint voice answered with a single word: money. When you step into the room today, it feels more like a shrine than a bedroom. The dresser and floor are lined with dolls, toys, and small offerings, even $1 bills left behind by visitors hoping to comfort her or simply pay their respects. Some call it superstition. Others call it empathy. Whatever it is, the air feels different here. Not hostile, just sad. When I visited, the room was completely still. No EMF spikes, no voices on playback. Even after leaving a few dollars myself, the K2 never flickered once. Sometimes that silence says as much as any response ever could. Walk the second-floor hallways and you might catch movement in your peripheral vision. Dark shapes slipping between doorways, footsteps that stop when you stop. Every floor has its stories, and the deeper you go, the heavier it gets. Because above the Civil War wing, there's another level entirely, what people here call the asylum. The top floor of Madison Seminary is what people here call the asylum. That's not an official name, just something visitors started saying, and it stuck. During the years the state controlled the property, this level held residents with mental illness and later, inmates under supervision. The air changes when you reach this floor. The hallways are narrow and echo longer than they should. Paint curls off the walls, and light filters through the windows in thin strips during the day, catching the dust as it moves. It's quiet, but not the comfortable kind. Many visitors describe hearing footsteps or seeing quick shadows slide across the doorways. Others say the feeling of sadness or panic can come on suddenly and vanish just as fast when they step back into the hall. One of the rooms here has been staged to resemble an old surgical suite. A metal table in the center, complete with stirrups, tools, and a single lamp. Visitors call the presence in this room the surgeon. Over the years, some have claimed to hear short commands. Hold still. Don't move. There's no verified recording of these words, but the story is repeated often enough that it's become part of the building's folklore. When my colleague and I entered that room, it was still. No EMF spikes, nothing on the spirit box. We ran a short EVP session, asked a few simple questions, and didn't notice anything unusual at the time. Later, while reviewing the audio, something faint came through. You could hear distant voices, other people somewhere else on the floor, but no one was in the room with us. Using headphones, you can hear there's a whisper that sounds like, "Make it stop." Now, I'm not 100% sure that's what it said, but the both of us listening to it, that's what we agreed upon. It's then followed by more words that we couldn't make out at all. It's subtle and easy to miss without listening closely. I've posted that raw clip on our website if you want to hear it for yourself. It'll be linked in the show notes as well. Whether it's a quirk of the recording or something we can't explain, I can't say, but it's there. Faint, layered beneath the background noise. A moment that makes you think about what this room might still be holding on to. A few steps down the hall is another space people talk about, one without an official name. Visitors describe walking in and being overwhelmed with emotion, sometimes to the point of tears. It's been nicknamed the emotional room, though that's just something people started saying after enough visitors felt the same thing. We didn't experience that reaction ourselves, but the air felt heavier, still and dense, like the room itself remembers pain. Between the surgeon's room and that space, this floor leaves a mark. Not because of what you see, but because of what you feel. It's the sense that some echoes never really fade. The longer you're inside Madison Seminary, the more it feels like each floor carries a different emotion. The basement is focused and unnerving. The attic level, the asylum, is heavy. The Civil War era wing feels almost protective. People have come to connect those feelings to the names that linger here. Elizabeth Stiles, Sarah, the surgeon. But there's one story that doesn't come with a plaque or verified record. That's the story of the superintendent's wife. As it's told, she lived here during the years when the state ran the building. Something happened. Grief, pressure, or despair, and she took her own life somewhere on the upper floors. Depending on who tells it, the rooms change, the year changes, but the ending always stays the same. Visitors say they sense an older woman's presence, quiet but heavy with sadness. A sudden chill, a quick exhale through the ear. Sometimes it's nothing more than that instinct to whisper an apology when you step into a space that doesn't feel empty. There are no public records confirming her death here. The archives from the state-operated years are incomplete, and nothing official matches the story. Yet the tale endures, handed down through caretakers, investigators, and tour guides who have spent decades inside these walls. Part of the confusion may come from another Ohio haunting that sounds almost identical. In 1949, at the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Helen Gladke, the warden's wife, died from a gunshot wound in the residence above the prison. Ruled an accident, but long rumored otherwise. That tragedy is well documented, and over time, stories of the superintendent's wife seem to have bled across Ohio's old institutions. So here at Madison Seminary, what we have is oral history, consistent in tone, thin on paperwork. Whether that makes it legend or memory is up for debate. For me, it serves as context. It explains the wave of sorrow people describe on those upper floors, the feeling that the building itself is mourning. And whether you treat it as an unverified death or a haunting shaped by empathy, the effect is the same. You slow your pace in those hallways. You speak a little softer, and you can't shake the sense that someone, somewhere, still calls this place home. We haven't found an official record for her death, but the story you just heard is the same one told by guides and investigators for years. And in a place like this, that's often how history survives. Earlier, you heard what happened in the basement of Madison Seminary, that strange back and forth through the K2 meter. We've gone over that moment more times than I can count, trying to make sense of it. The basement sits beneath a century and a half of renovations. Old stone, rough cement, thick air that seems to absorb sound. There is power in parts of the building, but before we started, we checked EMF levels throughout the room. Nothing rose above a minimal baseline reading. When the spikes came, they weren't random noise. They were distinct and timed, far higher than anything we'd seen during setup. Paranormal investigators divide activity into two broad types: residual and intelligent. Residual energy is like an emotional recording, an imprint of past events replaying itself. Intelligent activity seems to respond. It listens, reacts, engages. What we experienced that night felt like intelligent. But whether that intelligence was ours, environmental, or something else, I still don't know. Just down the corridor sits the old laundry room, a textbook example of residual energy. People have reported faint sounds of carts rolling or footsteps crossing tile, always in the same pattern, never interacting. It's not communication, it's repetition, a loop of routine still echoing in time. Science offers its own explanations. EMF meters can react to stray frequencies, static discharge, even shifts in the human body's electrical field. Expectation plays a part too. The longer you wait for a light to blink, the stronger the moment feels when it finally does. And yet, even after you account for every variable, there's something about this building that defies simple logic. Maybe that's coincidence. Or maybe it's the residue of history, emotion, loss, compassion, recorded in the walls of a 50,000 square foot time capsule. Madison Seminary sits in the space between what's proven and what's felt, where history blurs into memory and memory becomes something else. Whatever you believe, places like this remind us that curiosity isn't about finding proof. It's about listening to what refuses to be forgotten. Most of what we experienced at Madison Seminary could be explained. The cold spots, the creaking, the faint footsteps, all the normal signatures of an old building that's lived a long life. But some things still don't line up so neatly. The faint voices on the recorder, the yes and no responses on the K2 that seem to come almost instantly, too consistent to feel random. Those moments stay with you. What struck me most about Madison wasn't just the unexplained, though. It was how human the place feels. Every floor carries a different emotion: grief, hope, loneliness, care. It's not the story of one ghost or one tragedy. It's the weight of 2 centuries of people living, working, suffering, and trying to find meaning inside the same walls. And maybe that's what hauntings really are. Not an apparition or a flicker of light, but the residue of lives that mattered. You feel it in Sarah's room, surrounded by small offerings people leave behind. You feel it in the silence of the basement, where questions still hang in the dark. And you feel it in the story of Elizabeth Stiles, a woman who risked her life as a spy during the Civil War, who carried messages through enemy lines for the Union cause, and who, after the war, chose to spend her final years caring for other women who had nowhere else to go. If spirits linger anywhere, maybe it's because their purpose isn't finished. And for someone like Elizabeth, whose life was built on service, maybe that purpose is still to watch over this place, a quiet guardian making sure the stories of the forgotten aren't lost. Science can explain most of what happens here, but it can't explain why some of us feel compelled to keep looking, why we walk into the dark, not to prove anything, but to connect with something we can't quite name. For me, Madison Seminary was a reminder that the unknown isn't always something to fear. Sometimes it's just history trying to speak. And curiosity, if we let it, is how we listen. This experience reignited that curiosity for me, not to chase ghosts, but to understand the stories they leave behind. And that's what keeps me coming back to places like this. This has been State of the Unknown, a brick and timber relic in a quiet Ohio town, a place that's been a school, a refuge, a hospital, and a home. And somewhere within those walls, echoes that refuse to fade. Madison Seminary endures not because the stories are proven, but because no one has ever quite proven they aren't. Some say it's memory. Some say it's energy. Maybe it's both. If you've been enjoying State of the Unknown, thank you for listening and for helping this little show keep growing week after week. The best way you can support it is simple. Leave a quick rating or review. On Spotify, it's just a tap. On Apple Podcasts, a few words make a huge difference. I read every single one, and I can't tell you how much it means. Until next time, stay curious, stay unsettled, and whatever you do, don't listen too closely when the lights go out.